Hi, it's Jan Beta, and in this episode I'm going to tell you everything I know about retrobrighting. If you are participating in any kind of way in the hobby of retro computing or vintage computing or retro gaming using original hardware, you've probably come across something that looks like this: yellowed plastics. And that is, of course, particularly visible on things that are beige or white or light gray, like many computers and consoles in the 80s and the early 90s were. So this is kind of a problem because it just doesn't look very great. Over the years, quite some mythology around the yellowing processes and the reversal of these processes have built up. And I'm not going to go into the chemistry of it, but I'm just going to tell you what I know, which is basically a layman's view. I'm not a chemist at all. I have some hands-on experience with processes like this. I have a lot of yellowed plastics, and I managed to bring many of these pieces back to their original look. So why does this yellowing appear at all in the first place? As far as I know, and from what I could gather from various sources, this is a process that's basically just a breakdown of the plastics. There used to be the myth that it is the bromide in the plastics that's used as a flame retardant, basically, but that doesn't seem to be the main cause of the yellowing. There are many processes involved, and plastics are a mix of different components usually, and if you expose them to some kind of chemical accelerant, like in this case mostly UV light from the sun, they are going to break down gradually. And as these things are several decades old, the breakdown process just manifests in them getting yellow on the outside. You can see on this example that plastics are different mixes basically, and they react differently. Most of the normal letter keys on this keyboard are still quite white or beige as they were originally, whereas the spacebar and the rest of the casing is super yellow. So definitely this was exposed to the same amount of UV light, everything in this keyboard, but plastics just behave differently. And there are some UV protected plastics around, and I think that's probably what these keycaps were made of. If you want to learn more about how this happens and what actually causes this, I highly recommend watching a video that Jeff Bird made a while back on his channel Hey Bird that goes into quite some depth about myths about retrobrighting, and I can only recommend that. He just does some experiments and did a lot of research regarding the yellowing of plastics and also the countermeasures that are commonly done these days. The countermeasures that we hobbyists usually take against the yellowing are called retrobrighting or retrobright. There are several different spellings of this. I think the original one is kind of in lead speak. I like this spelling here and I use that all the time. It's all accepted in the community, I think, these days. The process involves bleaching, and there was the myth that basically the process just brought the plastic back to its original color in some kind of magical way, but it is just a bleaching process. So there are different ways you can achieve bleaching as you would on, I don't know, your hair, your clothing, anything else basically. And the bleaching agent that most people use is hydrogen peroxide solution, which is readily available in different concentrations depending on where you live. Hydrogen peroxide is a super reactive chemical, so it's nothing to be handled lightly, and that's also the reason that there are restrictions on how high a concentration of that stuff you can get. The highest concentration I can get here is 12%. That's, I think, probably the highest concentration you can get in all of Europe. I'm in Germany here. There are countries where you can get up to 30% easily, I think. And if you are a chemist, you can probably get the pure stuff, but we don't need that for retrobrighting. There's quite a few methods of retrobrighting, one of which doesn't even involve hydrogen peroxide or any chemicals at all, and that is just putting the stuff out in the sun and letting the UV from that great fusion reactor in the sky do the magic and bleach the plastics. And that works really well. The best part of it is that you don't even have to take things apart. You can just put a whole computer into the sun and that is going to do some bleaching on the plastics and it's going to look a bit better afterwards. The downside is that it's exposed to a lot of UV light and heat from the sun in case you have a sunny day. This also works on a cloudy day because there's still UV getting to the pieces. But on a sunny day, it might degrade the plastic even more and make them a bit more brittle. The other methods I'm going to tell you about, I found that the plastics don't get any more brittle than they were. Most of them are already brittle before you start the process because they are several decades old at this point. And as I said, plastic just degrades over time, no matter what you do. Even if you store them outside of UV light, you are going to see some degradation of the plastic because there's so many chemicals involved in the mix that they are slowly breaking down over the years. Probably you could store them in a vacuum, but that's no fun. The method I used most frequently is to just use hydrogen peroxide cream, which is usually used to bleach hair, so it's a cosmetics product, or to use the so-called submersion method. That involves putting the parts into liquid peroxide solution, and then you need some kind of accelerant for the bleaching reaction. That is usually either UV light or heat or both. I found that both of those work. You just need something to speed up the chemical reaction, otherwise it's going to take ages. Both heat and light play a part. You don't necessarily need UV light. I've been using a grow light for plants with my retrobrighting process and that worked really well. And that also heats up the environment of the plastics quite a bit. Heat is a problem. As soon as you go higher than around 60 degrees Celsius, the plastics is going to be melty and is going to bend. So you don't want to go above 60 degrees Celsius is what I found to be the magic number for most plastics. It might vary a bit for different plastics, but I found that's a quite safe temperature to do this at. There's a rather recent method, as recent as 2022, I believe, that was invented by Simon Locke. And that involves putting a small amount of liquid peroxide in a container that is sealed, and the plastic part you want to bleach into the same container but not touching the liquid peroxide. It's just the vapors that do the bleaching. So this method is called vapor brighting. I haven't tried that yet, mainly for the reason that I don't have a container that's suitable. You want something that is sealed pretty well because, as I said, hydrogen peroxide is not really fun to work with because it's a dangerous chemical after all. That method seems to be really soft on the plastics and it works really well, and people reported that even colored plastics get a lot better and you don't get as much discoloration as with some of the other methods. And talking about discoloration, of course, there's the risk of overdoing it, over bleaching the plastics, so you get like discoloration, streaks and marbling and some not really great looking results. You can also just do it so much that you get a brighter color than the plastics originally were. In my experience, basically the slower you go, the less risk of getting discoloration there is. So I'm using a pretty slow method that I'm going to show you in a second, and that worked really well for me over the years. There's also different risks of getting discoloration depending on the method you use. The cream method is the most dangerous basically, so you have to be very careful. If you are careful, it works really well. I've done that numerous times now and with amazing results mostly. I think I had one or two things that didn't work, but like 95% of the time it works for me with my method. The submersion method is a bit better. You can still over bleach your stuff, but there's not much risk of getting any marbling just because the hydrogen peroxide is so evenly spread because it is a liquid. And the vapor brighting seems to be the least dangerous method in that regard because the hydrogen peroxide is not even touching the whole thing. You just get the vapors that are really evenly spread in your container, touching and doing the bleaching. Maybe one honorable mention, kind of, that I forgot. You can also use like these powders that you put in your washing machine for bleaching clothing, OxiClean and things like that. I tried that one time, or a couple of times actually, and it didn't work too well. It did do some bleaching, but it was not very controlled, so I prefer hydrogen peroxide. But some people got great results with the OxiClean products or similar bleaches for clothing. And yeah, your mileage may vary. One more thing that I should mention is that yes, the yellowing is going to return eventually, because due to the nature of this just being a bleaching process, you're not going to stop the degradation of the plastic in any way. You're just changing the color on the outside of the plastic. So the process is going to continue no matter what you do, or at least there isn't a solution for that problem at this point in time that I know of. But because of that, it is also completely possible to re-retrobrite things, and that usually works pretty well. Tried that for the first time recently with great success. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all I know about retrobriting, the theory behind it. If you are interested in more theory, just watch Jeff's video. It's very good and it's very in-depth, as I said. I'm just going to go into a kind of hands-on thing because that's more my thing on this channel. And I'm going to show you my retrobriting box that I used for many of my retrobriting experiments. And I'm going to upgrade that slightly. And then we're going to do some retrobriting, just to show you the process that I've used over the years with quite some success. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to use the same process. Make up your own mind, try some stuff, and find the solution that works best for you, which is probably hydrogen peroxide solution. So over the years, I mostly used this box, which says Microsoft Authorized Refurbisher, which I quite like, that somebody sent me with a broken old computer inside, probably. I don't remember which one. But I just clad this in some aluminum or aluminium foil, and it's in a pretty rough shape, but it still worked. I did some retrobriting in my recent video about the Atari. I have this little container that I use for liquid retrobriting mostly. That works really well. And then I have this grow light here, which is just used for plants. It's just a mix of blue and red LEDs, basically. Has a fan in it. It heats up quite significantly. It claims it is 300 watt device, but I think it's just the equivalent of the amount of light that this outputs. If this were an incandescent device, it would be 300 watts of power that this uses. This uses way less power. 300 watts, 192 LEDs. The ratio of pink to blue is 7:1, so it's pink and blue LEDs actually. This particular one is not available anymore, but there are many similar devices that are readily available. I think I bought this on Amazon back in the day. This has served me well for quite some years. And then what I usually do is to put this on this cutout here that I made, that just fits this, connect it to the mains and turn it on, and then put the plastic parts in here, either in liquid peroxide in the little container I've shown you, or in plastic bags that are well sealed, or I'm brushing them with the peroxide cream and wrap them in cling wrap. And then I usually go in every half hour or so and smear the cream around. For the liquid peroxide, you basically just have to shake the container a bit and make sure that everything is exposed to the hydrogen peroxide in the same way to get even results. With the cream peroxide, if you don't do the smearing the cream around stuff, you usually get some marbling or discoloration, so that's a bit of work. But it worked really well with that method, just putting this light on here and smearing the cream around under the foil every half hour or so worked really well for me, and usually I get great results after a couple of hours. Mostly like 6-7 hours give me good results depending on the plastics and the yellowing, of course. So yeah, as you've seen, this is in a pretty sorry state. Most of the foil is coming off because my spray adhesive that I used doesn't hold very well on this cardboard box. So I think the first thing I want to do is to overhaul this slightly. Remove the old aluminum foil and put some new stuff in there, make it a bit shinier. And I also got a UV LED strip that I want to permanently put in here. Going to see how that works out. The aluminum foil actually is to reflect both the light and insulate it a bit heat-wise. So worked really well, even in this state. But I'm going to redo it and make it a bit more safe to use by just putting something waterproof or hydrogen peroxide solution proof in the bottom here as well. Because you are going to have some leakage if you are doing this, and some spillage. I usually get that, at least because I'm a bit clumsy. So this is what this looks like in this state. Yeah, as I said, I'm just going to rip all the old stuff out and going to put some better in there and fix it a bit more properly. This was just, I winged this basically. Thought about this and wanted to try how well it worked, and just basically just very quickly glued some foil to this. It had the right size for everything I wanted to retro bright, so I decided on this box, which was just laying around. So this fits all the computers I have basically, and everything else, which is a nice bonus. And as witnessed by these brighter spots here, I had some spillage of hydrogen peroxide in here over the years. Also shows that the bleaching process also works on cardboard. And yeah, I apologize in advance because this is going to be quite difficult to film. Mostly because my lab is quite tiny and this is as high as the camera stand goes. I don't even know exactly how I'm going to do it, but I have some ideas. We're going to figure it out together, or I'm going to figure it out and you are going to be witness to that process. So I have several ingredients, so to say, that I want to try to use. The good old aluminum foil, spray adhesive. I have one of these emergency blankets, which have one gold and one silver side and are also thermally insulating, which is a plus, I guess. And I have this aluminum adhesive tape. And the aforementioned UV LED strip light. Yeah, this is basically black light, as it's called, that you would find in a disco or something like that. Yeah, I'm old enough to call it disco and not club. I think that's what the kids call it these days. But yeah, this is black light that's at the longer wavelength spectrum of UV, but it probably should speed up the process quite a bit. Haven't tried this, but some people reported that black light works really well. And it's also not really dangerous for your eyes, which is a huge plus compared to more aggressive UV. The first step is going to be putting new reflectors in there. And I think I want to start with the emergency blanket. I'm not sure how well this is going to adhere to my cardboard, but we're going to find out. This also has the great advantage of being waterproof, and so I want to put this on the bottom of the box, of course. Let's see, this should be 160 centimeters by 210 centimeters, so plenty of size here. We're going to have to cut this. And as I said, it has a golden and a silver side, super thin, but still warm in an emergency. I can't really talk over this, so I'm just going to unfold it and see how large it actually is. It's huge! Okay, so this is going to provide the bottom, at least, of the box. And I'm just going to cut it to size, I guess. like this, with the box in this orientation. Yep, that should do. Probably just going to try a spray adhesive for this. That worked rather well. I think I'm going to put some aluminum tape on the sides here. This should be a nice bottom layer. Just going to cut some strips to size here. And this doesn't have to be really precise in any way, so. So yeah, I'm going to cut the edges here, pretty much a centimeter above the ground level here, and then use the aluminum tape to tape it on the edges so it's extra sealed. Okay, got my edges cut. Maybe I'm just going to cut out these parts as well, because the emergency blanket seems to work really well. I guess that's a good idea. This seems to be less prone to ripping than the original aluminum foil that I used. So some more cutting to size. Okay, didn't go very well. And some more gluing. This seems to work relatively well. And yeah, I'm just going to do all the bottom parts like this, I guess. I think I have enough emergency blanket to do that. Okay, that turned out rather nicely. I'm just going to let it settle for a bit and let the fumes evaporate and leave the room. And then I'm going to come back and find a solution for these. Maybe I'm just going to try to put some of that blanket on these folding parts here as well. So this kind of looks like something from outer space now. Satellite. I'm just going to use some of this aluminum tape to secure some of the seams. And yeah, and that's that, I guess. And this stuff should be really sticky. And by the way, the silver side of these emergency blankets is the side that reflects heat, actually. The gold side absorbs heat. So if you want to warm somebody up, you use the silver side towards what you want to warm up, which in this case is a piece of aging plastic. So I sealed off the bottom seams, which I think should be enough just to make this a bit more waterproof or hydrogen peroxide proof. So that's what we're looking at now. Looks really crinkly, but that couldn't be avoided with the thin material that I'm using here. Still closes up fine, I think. Yep, everything's going according to plan so far. And I think what I want to also do is to just put some duct tape on the seams here to make it a bit more sturdy from the outside. Yeah, let's do that. And yeah, I'm just going to go around the perimeter here. Just to keep it together. And I'm going to do the same with the seams on the bottom here. And maybe I could strengthen this here a bit so it holds up. Yeah, that's better. Now it doesn't flap around as much. And the other side I'm going to put some tape on there as well in this position. I'm going to do the same on this side. And then these two are just sitting on top there, and there's our light on here that should keep it in place. Still a bit of a work in progress, but I think I made the bottom of it watertight or hydrogen peroxide tight, which I was after, and it's a bit more reflective than it was. It's probably a lot more temperature preserving and heat insulating than it was. So yeah, let's see what I want to do with the UV LED strip thing. Don't know how long this is. 16.4 feet, so that's pretty long. It should come with a power supply, so we can wrap this around the inside of the box for quite a bit. And it has some adhesive tape on the back, I think. Yep. It's not 3M, it's EM. Okay, so this is probably not very adhesive, but it should be 5 meters of stuff, so we should be able to wrap it around the inside of the box a couple of times, I guess. Just going to go with a kind of a spiral inside there, I think. And this should be on the outside, so we're going to put a little hole in one of the corners of the box, I think, so we can easily plug in. I'm just going to try that, and if it doesn't work well, we're just not going to use it in the future. Turning on. Yay! And you can see that's our disco light here. We have our white plastic reflecting it quite well. And it gets a bit warm, of course. That's kind of the purpose as well. So this is going to help heat up and probably speed up the process quite a bit. So I decided to start on the bottom, and I made a little hole here, a couple of centimeters from the top. I'm just going to glue this on there with the adhesive backing and go in a spiral upwards, I guess, and see how far up we go. It seems to stick really well. You probably can't see it all. I'm about halfway in now, I think, or thereabouts. Yeah, and that's it. So I have a nice thing on the bottom, because from the top that's going to be mostly my grow light that's doing the magic. And I'm just going to fix the point where the cable comes out with some aluminum tape, so it holds in place, making sure not to touch the circuit board, because that is not insulated at all, I think. So we would touch the components there. And we don't want to short anything out. Yeah. That's my LED strip in place. I have no idea if this is going to do anything any good, but we're going to see. Probably it just helps heating up the whole thing, and also the UV light should speed up the process a bit, especially from the bottom where there was not much light coming. Let's see if it still lights up. Should look pretty amazing like this, I guess. There's a switch. Yeah. Should have quite some even lighting in here, just like that with the reflective stuff. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And as you can see, I went at a slight angle, so we have like a spiral starting from the bottom. So yeah, it should be pretty evenly lit with this UV stuff now. And this is quite a nice dance floor now for hand-sized dancers. So I am going to try to retrobrite a thing, which is this Atari mouse. Came with the ST series of computers, as you probably know. Nicely designed mice. But this one is yellowed. You can see here that the top side that was exposed to sunlight is much more yellow than the bottom side, which is kind of the original color, which is a light gray tone. I don't want to try this with something super valuable like the Amiga keyboard you saw me holding up earlier in this video. That's a very rare Amiga 1000 keyboard actually. It is super yellow and probably needs some retrobrighting at some point. But to minimize the risk to that thing, I'm going to try my refurbished retrobrighting box with this first. I am going to clean this meticulously. The plastic parts you want to retrobright need to be reasonably clean at least. I try to get them as clean as possible. This one is quite dirty, and as soon as there's grease on there or stains or anything like that, you are going to get discoloration in those spots because the chemicals can't reach them basically. We're going to take this apart. I only want the case parts, and then I'm going to clean this meticulously in the sink. This is just a small object. For larger objects, I usually use my shower to clean larger objects. You can use whatever you have at hand. So this should now come apart. Just 2 screws there. Yeah, I'm going to leave this stuff in here because these are just attached by these little screws. They are not going to be affected too much by the retrobrighting process. Also, stickers and such are not really affected in any way by the retrobrighting, at least as far as I can tell in my experience here. So this just goes. Going to give this a clean from the inside as well while I'm here. These are the parts we want to retrobrite, but first these need to be cleaned in the sink. I'm going to do that off camera. It's just using a sponge and some dish soap, and finally wipe it with some isopropanol to get rid of the rest of any grease or anything like that that might be on there, especially on a mouse or on a keyboard. There's usually some finger grease on there. So I washed this in the sink and most of the dirt is already gone. There are some spots here. I'm just going to put some isopropanol on here and wipe it again. The label already dissolved a bit in the water. Nothing to do with the retrobrighting, just with the water. So yeah, we want to bring this to this color, and the sides here, which are also a bit yellow greenish, want to bring that back to the original gray. So I'm just going to deliberately use the most dangerous method in terms of getting streaking and things like that, and that is the peroxide cream method. Just doing this to see how well this works actually. With the method I use for larger parts, you always want to wear gloves when handling hydrogen peroxide, because even in the 12% solution like we're using here, it is pretty aggressive on the skin, and this stuff is meant to bleach hair, so it's not going to kill you, but it can sting, especially if you have some abrasion on your hands or something like that. And it's also going to bleach everything that comes into contact with this, especially your clothing and things like that. And your hair, as a matter of fact, because that's what this is made for. This is Hair Salon Hydrogen Peroxide Cream, 12% solution that I used for a number of years now, and it works really well. And I have the same stuff in liquid form, basically 12% solution liquid. But as I said, I'm going to try this because it works less reliably, and marbling and streaking is more likely with this. Kind of odd, I know, but yeah, we're going to see how well this goes. I'm using a cling wrap from my kitchen here, and I usually just spread it out on the table. This is the same process that I use for larger parts. I spread it out. I use a paintbrush to paint some of the cream on. And yeah, I'm just painting this. You've seen me do this a number of times now, probably, if you're watching my videos. Just spreading this out, roughly the size of the object, and putting some on here as well, on the object itself. And spreading that in all the little corners. You don't need a lot, you just need kind of an even spread. And even the vapors are going to do the magic, as witnessed by the vapor brighting technique itself. This is quite the messy process, of course. And these chemicals, as I said repeatedly, are quite aggressive. So this is what we have, and I'm going to do the same for the other parts. Once I have this in the box, I'm going to go in every half hour and just do something like this. Just slightly move the cream around so we don't have any spots where there's a lot of cream accumulating and bleaching more than necessary. You basically just spread this like paint. So just a thin layer is usually enough to do the magic. So this goes on here like so. And the foil, the cling wrap, is just to prevent this from vaporizing. So you don't want this to get dry. This, we don't really need to do this. I'm just going to leave this out of the equation for now. And now these parts go into my retrobrighting box. So basically what I'm going to do is to use a little container here. This looks so much shinier than before. I'm just going to use my little translucent container here to prop these up and have them like in the center of the box. For larger parts you can also put them on the bottom, but I found that this helps quite a bit. Then we're just going to put our light on here. Turn the new internal light turning on, and then my grow light goes on top here, and the process is starting. And I'm going to set a timer for half an hour and come in and check the temperature and see if the process is starting. Usually it takes a bit before this gets up to temperature, and then it takes a bit longer to start the retrobrighting process and you see some results. But that's the process basically. So half an hour later, and I'm going to go in and check up on things. Okay, it definitely gets a lot warmer quickly. We still see that this is pretty yellow. Just going to massage the cream around, as I said. And yeah, I'm going to report back when I'm seeing some results here. And this is what I'm going to do every half hour, basically. Just massaging the cream around, checking up on things, checking the temperature by feeling it. It's way below 60 degrees Celsius still, so we're going to be good regarding the warping of plastics. Okay, 1.5 hours, and I just want to quickly get the temperature here, I think, on the pieces. That's like 42 degrees, 43 degrees. That's a good temperature to speed up the process and not do any harm to the plastics. And as you can see, maybe, it already starts working, which is a bit faster than what I usually got. Which was to be expected because we are putting a lot more energy into the reaction here with the added lights. Yeah, already is a bit brighter. Usually this takes like at least 6 hours with the old method, and with the new method maybe we're going to be a bit faster. And this was another one of my half-hour stops basically, so each time I just massage the cream around a bit. So 4 hours in, and I think we might just be done, which would be quite significantly faster. Yeah, that looks really good. Okay, so this is what this mouse looks like now. We have this, you can see some slight yellowing still, but it's nearly the same color now, the inside and the outside. So I'm going to call this finished. Let's wash this and have a look. And I've got to say, this turned out really nicely. So this is the inside, the original color. No real difference to the outside now. The sides on this, I can see some very slight difference to the original color. Bit more yellow, but not very significant. Definitely a lot better than before. Unfortunately, the sticker here just wore off. It's just a paper sticker on these. I didn't know that. So probably a good idea to check your stickers. On the Commodore stuff, usually these stickers hold up fine because they are plastic covered at least. Yeah, kind of some backlash. But to prove my point, the new Retrobrighting box works really well. It is significantly faster than what I had before. I estimated this to be 6 hours of Retrobrighting and it only took 4. So 30% or thereabouts less time is needed to get to similar results with the new setup here, which makes sense because there's more energy going into the equation here with the added LEDs and also with the better shielding from temperature loss and things like that. And reflectivity is probably also a point. One thing I don't want to forget is that you actually have to wash these quite meticulously. You don't want any hydrogen peroxide on these once they are finished. You want to clean these completely, otherwise the reaction is of course going to go on and you are going to get some marbling effects and things like that. I did that. This is still slightly wet, so I'm not going to put this mouse back together yet. Also the cable needs a really good scrubbing, but I'm going to do that off camera probably. This is the end result for this Retrobrighting excursion. Yeah, I think that's it for today. Really happy with my new modded Retrobrighting box and the results I'm getting with it. I hope it's going to serve me well for quite some time. It's just a cardboard box, so who knows how long this is going to last, but it lasted couple of years now, so I'm pretty confident that it's going to last a couple of years more with these reinforcements. Thank you very much for watching. Thanks for your time. Special thanks go out to everybody who supports me on Patreon, on Ko-fi and the YouTube channel memberships page. The links to that are in the video description in case you want to give me some support, which of course is highly appreciated. It allows me to buy LED strips, for example, and things like that, and pay the rent. Hope to see you again on this channel sometime. I'm Jan Beta. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.